Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Dewey podcast, where we help you improve your English poco a poco or podcast by podcast. Now, today we're going to be talking about the Language Cert speaking exam, in particular the B2 speaking exam. Now, the A2, B1, B2, C1 and the C2 are very similar with Language Cert. However, we're going to be focusing on the B2 exam today. All right, let's get into it. Now, there are 4 parts to the speaking exam, as you well know. The first part is general questions. Now, there are 2 questions that they will always ask you in this exam, and we know what they're going to be, so we can prepare for those questions. The 2 questions are, how do you spell your family name? And where are you from? Now, 2 very basic questions, but we do not want basic answers. We are looking to start the speaking exam with a bang. We want to show the examiner that we are here to prove the level of English that we have right from the start. So, when the examiner asks you, or the interlocutor asks you, how do you spell your family name? I want your answer not to be, in my case, Cockings, like a robot. I want you to say, my surname is Cockings, and you spell it Cockings. Okay, did you see what I did there? I changed family name for surname. I stated the name that I was going to spell, and then I spelt it really clearly. Okay? The next question, where are you from? Again, a very basic question, but we want to show the examiner and the interlocutor more than just I'm from England or I'm from Spain. This is a great opportunity to show a range of grammar. So here, for example, when they say, where are you from? You could say something like, I'm originally from England. However, I've been living here in Murcia for the past 7 years. Now, I know at B2 level, you should understand every single part of that answer and you should be able to produce every single part of that answer. But just take a look at it. Let's break it apart. I'm originally from England. However, we've got a cohesive device. I have been living, present perfect continuous, here in Murcia for the past 7 years. I'm showing that I know the difference between for and since. Okay? Another option that you could say using the passive is I was born and raised here in Murcia, or here in wherever you were born and raised. Okay? Now, after those first 2 questions, we then get into general questions. Now, you should be practicing general questions on a daily basis. One really good way to practice general questions, I wrote a book. Let's get it in the camera. It's called Question Mark, and you can buy this online. It's 365 different questions, one for every day of the year, and it ranges in ability from A2 all the way up to C2 level. If you answered 1 question a day in this book, you will be 100% prepared for this part of the exam. It's general questions, okay? Now, when they ask you the question, we don't want just a 1-sentence answer. We always extend our answers, don't we? All right, so the examiner will say something like, thank you. Now, part 1, I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself and your ideas. And the interlocutor can choose up to 5 questions, 1 from each of the topics that they are given, okay? The example here is television. So the examiner will say, now, television. They will always state the name of the topic that they're going to ask you a question from first. Okay, so television. How much television do you watch in a week? Again, a very basic question. Now, this part of the exam, I'm going to teach you a friend, and this will follow you around for all of the exams and any general question. Your friend is, it depends. Why? Because you can take your answer in so many different ways, okay? So how much television do you watch in a week? Well, That depends, or it depends, because at the moment work is really busy, so I don't get chance to watch much television during the week. However, during the summer, when I have more free time, I might be able to watch 3 or 4 hours of television a week. Can you see the difference? Using it depends gives you the option to go with a conditional. If I have free time, I can. And it gives you the opportunity to extend your answer. All right. Great. Right. Now let's move on to part 2 of the exam. Now in part 2, you are going to role play some situations with the interlocutor. The interlocutor will want you to either start or respond to some situations. Now, what's super important is that you understand your role and what is expected of you in each situation. I need you to use appropriate language for the situation that you are role playing. And I need you to stay in character. I know it sounds weird and it takes a bit of practice, but try and really get into character with the interlocutor. They appreciate it as well. It makes their day go by quicker and more entertaining for them. Try to react to situations in a realistic way. Also, be interactive. Don't just give 1 or 2 word answers. Really interact with the interlocutor. Don't wait for them to ask you questions. Maybe you ask the question. And again, practice. This part takes practice. How do we practice? Well, in classroom. Set up role play examples with some of your friends, etc. Get some past papers from the LanguageCert website and look at some of the past papers and the role plays that come up for your level. All right. Now, if you can, in this part of the exam, try not to reuse vocabulary. Okay. Try to rephrase vocabulary and show the examiner or the interlocutor that you have a wide range of vocabulary, not just the vocabulary that they give you. Okay. So if they say you are waiting in a shop, try not to use shop when you're speaking. Say store or department store or grocery shop. All right, make it more specific, but try not to just repeat the vocabulary that they give you. Another really good tip for this part of the exam is tag questions. Now, tag questions are what we put on the end of a question to give the conversation back to someone else. So an example would be, this is an absolutely amazing video, isn't it? All right, and the isn't it is the tag question, and it passes it back to the other speaker and gives them chance to respond. Okay, so tag questions, really good tip for this part of the exam. And then intonation. We don't want to sound like robots. We don't want to sound on one level. We want to sound interesting. So intonation is one way of doing that, where you really stress syllables in words. And then when you want to finish speaking, I call it going down the intonation stairway. So an example, I'll try and think of example quickly, and you watch as I finish my sentence, I go down the stairs to show the other speaker that I'm finishing what I want to say. I just did it then. To show the other speaker that I'm finishing what I want to say. Can you see me going down the stairs of intonation? That's what I'd like you to do. All right. Now here's an example role play. The interlocutor will say, now, part 2. We are going to role play some situations. I want you to start or respond. First situation. We are flatmates. You don't really want to go out tonight. I start. Come on, we'll be late if we don't go soon. And you need to reply. Now, in this part, when the interlocutor is introducing the role play, listen for the important information. Okay, so we are flatmates. That's important. You don't really want to go out tonight. Really important. And then the examiner will start. Come on, we will be late if we don't go soon. Okay, so we will be late if we don't go soon, conditional. So your response to something like that, obviously, you don't want to go out, so you need to think of an excuse why you don't want to go out. Now, instead of saying, I really don't want to go out, I'm feeling ill, can you see we're all on one plane of intonation? I really want you to get into roll and go, oh, but I really can't go out tonight. I've got the worst headache in the world and I just don't fancy it. Can we rearrange and do it another night? Can you see how I'm now passing the conversation back to the interlocutor? And then the interlocutor could reply and say, come on, it's one night. Take a paracetamol. You'll be fine. We'll come home early if you feel worse. And then you reply to that. Then you have 2 or 3 interactions, and then you move on to the second situation. Second situation, you are just leaving my party and realize you don't have enough money to get a taxi home. You start. Again, listen for the important information. You are just leaving or just about to leave my party. You don't have enough money to get a taxi home, not the bus home, a taxi home. Okay, and then you start. Again, really get into character. Come up to me and say, I've really got to leave soon and I've just realized that I forgot my wallet and I don't have any money. Is there any chance that you can lend me some? All right. Can you see how I got into character and I spoke in a way that was interesting instead of just on one plane of intonation? All right. A tip here is to use connectors of contrast to talk about different things and to join your ideas together. All right, connectors are really important in the speaking exam and the writing exam, but in the speaking as well. Okay, let's move on to part 3. So part 3, you have to give a you have to, what do you have to do? You have to have a conversation with the interlocutor about a situation which they will introduce to you. Okay, now you get some information and the examiner gets some different information. Now, in this part, you really need to make sure you understand fully the information and the task and what you are expected to talk about. You get 20 seconds to prepare for this part of the exam. In those 20 seconds, you need to think about what you want to say and how you can use the information that the interlocutor gives you on the sheet. Again, like I said in the previous part, try not to use the vocabulary that they give you on the sheet. Try to rephrase as much as possible because this then extends your vocabulary points in the exam. All right. Listen carefully to the instructions when the interlocutor gives them to you. And then engage in the conversation. Don't just answer the questions that the examiner asks you. Contribute to the conversation by asking your own questions. Tag questions come into play here as well. It makes the conversation sound more natural, more native. And then, like I said earlier, use a wide range of language. Show off all of that vocab that you've been learning over the past years. Try to stay on topic as well. Don't change the topic. Try to stay to the topic that is given to you during the conversation, and then stay focused on the task. Okay. Again, practice is super important. You can download past papers from the LanguageCert website. Right, I'm going to be the interlocutor again, and I will introduce this part of the exam. Now, part 3. In this part of the test, we're going to discuss something together. We are planning to go on holiday with some friends. Let's talk about what kind of holiday we want and make some decisions. Here are some ideas. I have some different ideas. Take 20 seconds to think about what you want to say. And then after 20 seconds, the examiner or the interlocutor will ask you to start. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that I've highlighted the important information. We are planning, present continuous to talk about the future, to go on holiday with some friends. So holiday with some friends, important information. We need to talk about what kind of holiday. What's another way of saying kind? Type. What's another way of saying holiday? Vacation. Okay, so here's how you can rephrase some of the information given to you. You need to make some decisions as well. So making decisions means that you have to agree with the interlocutor. You need to make a decision and finalize those decisions. All right, and here are the ideas. So the interlocutor has time, location, transport, accommodation, activities, and reserve through. And then you have the same information, but where mine says time, first 2 weeks in August, yours says the first 2 weeks in June. Location, mine says a coastal resort and yours says mountains. For transport, mine says car hire and yours says hire a car as well, so we can agree on that. Accommodation, mine says self-catering apartment and yours is a family hotel. Activities, mine say swimming and sunbathing and yours is walking and photography. And then reserved through the internet, we both have internet. Okay, so there's some things that are the same and there are some things that are different. Now, the examiner will then ask you to start. Now here, what I would do is rephrase the task and then get straight into it. So an example would be something like, so we're planning that holiday with our mates. So mates instead of friends. When do you think everyone would be free? I think that the first 2 weeks of June is a good idea, isn't it? And then the interlocutor will follow up and say, well, I was actually thinking the first 2 weeks of August, but why June? And then you can follow up, okay? Now, did you notice my tag question to pass the conversation to the interlocutor? The first 2 weeks of June are a good idea, aren't they? Is another tag question example, okay? You can ask your who, what, where, why, when questions, direct questions to the interlocutor. Where should we go? Where do you think we could go? All right, so be sure that you're able to form questions here and then also reply to the questions that the examiner asks you. Tag questions are great. And then we've always got our trusted friends. I personally don't like them, but I do understand that in the exam you get nervous. So just to pass the conversation on, you can say things like, what do you think? Do you agree? How about you? All right. However, everyone uses those expressions, so I would prefer you to be unique and to stand out from everyone else. So if you can formulate full questions or ask tag questions, that's a great way of passing the question on and sounding different to every other candidate out there. All right, so that is part 3. Now, here's some tips. Ask the interlocutor questions related to the task. Refer back to what the interlocutor said, all right, and expand on their ideas. Also, to make it more natural, look at the interlocutor when you're speaking to them. Don't look down at your sheet all the time with all the information. Look up, look at them in the eye. Have a proper conversation so it looks natural and also sounds natural. And also show interest when you're speaking. You can make sounds like, oh yeah, yeah, that's a good idea. Say things like that. And then agree or disagree, but politely, all right? We don't want to be blunt in this part of the exam. Here's some handy phrases that you can use in this part of the exam. So to agree, we can say things like, right, good point, I fully agree. I was just going to say that. To disagree, but make sure you give reasons for disagreeing, you can say, that's not a bad idea, but what about da da da? I think it would be better to. I'm not so keen on that. However, and then give some more information or reasons. And then to reach decisions, you can say things like, so, what do you think is the best one? Are we both in favor of this thing? Okay, so we agree on this. And then you can say, if you can't come to an agreement, you can say something like, let's agree to disagree. And then, like I said, to end your turn, when you want to pass the conversation back to the interlocutor, you can say things like, what do you think? Do you have anything to add to that? That's a good idea, isn't it? And then all of those tag questions that we spoke about earlier. Okay, so that's part 3. Now, let's move on to part 4. Part 4 of the exam, you have to talk on your own for about 2 minutes. So you have to give a monologue for 2 minutes. The interlocutor has 3 topics to choose from, and they will give you 1. They will also give you some time to make some notes to help you with your monologue. Okay? Right, let's pretend that I have given you the topic of important inventions. Now, there are 3 topics on my screen if you can't, if you're listening instead of watching. They are care for elderly people, important inventions, and some festivals in your country. We're going to choose B, important inventions. Okay, I have an example monologue here, and on the video I have highlighted some really cool vocabulary, grammar structures, and things like that. So I would highly recommend checking out the video if you are listening. However, I will try to stress the important information and grammar structures. And I might even stop and talk you through each part. Okay. Now, with a monologue, we want it to sound like it's been prepared in a structured manner. Okay. And a way of getting some cohesive devices and some order into our monologue, we can split it up into sections and use our linking words to join those sections together. Okay. Now, I would always start your monologue by rephrasing what you're going to talk about. Okay. And a really cool way of doing that is saying, so, like you just said, I'm going to talk about important inventions. All right. That shows that you were listening to what he said and you were stating exactly what you were going to talk about. Okay. And it's always good as well to go into the speaking exam with a plan. You know exactly what you're going to say on that first line. It kind of takes the nerves away because you just rehearse that you're going to say, like you just said, I'm going to talk about, and then the topic that you're going to talk about. So for me today, important inventions. And then to start, I'm going to use first up. You could say firstly, or to start with, all right? And that gets you into your first paragraph or your first part of the monologue. Okay, so first up, we've got the wheel. It totally changed the game for getting things from one place to another. Think about it. Without wheels, we wouldn't have cars, bikes, or even those handy suitcases with wheels. Life would be a whole lot slower and tougher without them. Now I'm going to break this first part down for you so you can see some of the really cool vocabulary that I've used in here and why it will enhance your speaking. So in the first thing I said, first up, we've got the wheel. It totally changed the game. Instead of it changed the game, I put totally in there. It changed the game for getting things from one place to another. Think about it. Without wheels, we wouldn't have cars, bikes, or even those handy suitcases. All right, so or even instead of and. Life would be a whole lot slower and tougher without them. So instead of life would be a lot slower, We could say a whole lot slower, which makes it, it makes it, what word am I looking for? More dramatic. All right. And then I've said slower and tougher. I've put some comparatives in there. So that's the first part of my monologue. And then to move on to the next part, I say then. Then there's the printing press. Thanks to the printing press, books became way more affordable and more people could read and learn new stuff. So I've started that part of this monologue with then to show that I'm moving on to another topic. Thanks to the printing press, books became way more affordable. Instead of books became more affordable, again, I've said way more affordable. Like above where I said it totally changed. Okay, just adding these tiny bits of vocabulary to your speaking really helps your vocabulary grade. Then to move on, I use next. Next is electricity. It's like magic power that we can't even see, but it's everywhere, making our lives way more awesome and convenient. It charges our devices such as mobiles, laptops, and now even our cars. Where would we be without it? We wouldn't have basic things like lights. So again, let's break it down. I used next to start this part of the monologue. Instead of saying, for example, I used such as. And again, I used the colorful adjectives to make it more exaggerated. It would make our lives way more awesome. All right, not just more awesome, way more awesome. And then to finish the monologue, I'm going to start the last part with last but not least. So, last but not least, the internet. Seriously, where would we be without it? We can find answers to all our questions, chat with friends from across the globe, and even watch funny cat videos anytime, anywhere. It's like having the whole world right at our fingertips. So again, just to break it down quickly, last but not least, you're showing the interlocutor that you're coming to the end of your monologue. I've also asked a question. Where would we be without it? All right. So last but not least, the internet. Seriously, where would we be without it? And then I've used, where did I use it? Anytime, anywhere. That's a really good expression as well. You can put that into lots of monologues about many things. Anywhere or anytime, anywhere. And then to finalize, remember, I've spoken about intonation before. You're going to do the same thing here. Your last sentence, you're going to go down the intonation stairs. So yeah, these inventions, they're not just cool gadgets. They're things that totally changed our world and made life much more awesome. Can you see the stairs? Much more awesome. And that shows the interlocutor that you've finished, and then you just stop. Okay? Now, the examiner will stop you if you speak for too long. He will say, or she will say, thank you, and then move on. Now, the final part of part 4, after your monologue, the interlocutor will ask you some follow-up questions about your topic. So our topic was important inventions. And some of the follow-up questions could be, which modern invention do you use the most? Do you think any modern invention has had a bad effect on society? What invention would make the world a better place? And which modern invention has changed life significantly? Okay, again, these are very similar to the questions in part 1. I don't want you to give one-line answers. You're really going to extend on the answers that you give here. Okay, use lots of cohesive devices, however, wherever, etc., to extend your answers and to give a full response using everything that we've spoken about. All right, some final tips for part 4. Make sure that you understand your topic. Take the time to clearly understand the topic, okay? Remember, you need to be able to speak for 2 minutes about your topic. Use the time that you're given to write the notes. Now, don't write full sentences in that time. You're just going to write bullet points about what you're going to talk about. Because you've prepared and you know that you're going to start by rephrasing and telling the examiner what you're going to talk about, then you've got your firstly, next, then, last but not least, or finally. You can connect your ideas together. So if you can just get some topics onto the piece of paper that you're comfortable talking about, you can just talk, then look down to your next topic, then use the connector, and then start talking about the new topic to move things forward. You don't have much time, so please do not write full sentences. Just write bullet points about what you want to talk about. Another really handy tip for this part of the exam is think present, past, future. Okay, now it's difficult sometimes to use a wide range of grammar in a monologue. You get into a role and you just stick with what comes comfortable for you. But if you can think present, past, future, talk about something in the past, an experience that you've had, all right, talk about the present, and then talk about your prediction or something for the future, that will really enhance your grammar grade moving forward. All right, make sure that you speak clearly. Don't try to speak so fast. You get graded on your pronunciation. So make sure that you pronounce everything clearly and speak at a pace that's easy to follow. When you get to this sort of level, B2, C1, C2, your fluency is normally pretty good. But you start to speak faster where you don't need to. All right, bring the speed down and focus on intonation, word stress, syllable stress. Clearly pronounce the adjectives and things before the nouns. All right, absolutely amazing. All right, those sort of things really help with the final grade. And then, like everything, practice and practice and more practice. Okay, just think of a topic and then write some notes and then record yourself talking about that topic for 2 minutes. Listen back to it. You will self-correct. At this level, at B2, you will know by listening to yourself what you need to correct. And then relax as well. Speak as naturally as possible while maintaining really good language. Okay? Right, I think that's everything for the speaking part of the Language Cert exam. This video will be on YouTube. Obviously the audio, if you're listening, will be on all of the platforms that you can find your podcasts, and we will create a blog post which will be on blog.dewey.s for all of this as well. And if you would like any more information, or if you have any questions, please reach out to us through our website or any of the social platforms, and we will be happy to help. Right, that's me, Anthony, and I'm signing off. Catch you later.